We are less than a week away from the 4th Canadian Nationals. There has been some big changes this year. The schedules have been released, the artists have been revealed, the participant list has been finalized. So who is going to be the 2026 Canadian National Champion? As we are just a few days away from the Canadian Nationals taking place in Georgetown, Ontario, let's look at a few aspects of the competition, how it's been organized, what's different, what's the same, and let's talk about some of the decisions that have been made when it comes to the organization this year, and we'll just talk about it in general. This is not a prediction video. That will be released separately 72 hours before the first event takes place. That will be released, and I do have some special guests that join me to do that prediction video. I'll probably say who I think the winner is at the end of this video. We'll see. So like I said, this is the 4th year for the Canadian Nationals, and we are now into the era of the Canadian Nationals where critiques are going to be a bit more justified. 4 years running the national event. I'm not going to say the same event because it evolves and changes over time, but doing this for the 4th time, we can be a bit more critical or praise the good decisions that have been made. So let's just go through what this event's going to look like this year. So we'll talk about what's the same and what's different. First, this is the largest Canadian Nationals that we've ever had. We will have 400 individual participants, 348 pairs, and 161 teams at the time of this recording. I think there's still some spots left for teams, so that number could even go up further. What this does mean is that there's going to be a lot of newcomers to the Canadian Nationals, people that might not have had a spot before or just found out about speed puzzling competitions in the past few years. But what I do hope this opens the door for is that we might see some new names, some different names, surprise names at the top of the standings. So for the 4th consecutive year, the event will be held in Georgetown, Ontario. For the non-Canadians, that is about an hour drive from downtown Toronto in ideal conditions, or just over 30 minutes from the Toronto airport. For my international viewers, Canadians only measure traveling distance in time because that's what makes the most sense, not kilometers, definitely not miles. While there's no specific reason as to why Georgetown is the host town every year, it's not a city. The most obvious assumptions is that one, Toronto airport is quite close to Georgetown. It's quite close to the center of the country as well. So you need somewhere that's around Toronto airport. The exact middle point of Canada is somewhere in Manitoba, and that's not where Nationals will ever be. That's not an option. And the other reason that it's probably Georgetown and not another city that's within a half hour to an hour of the Toronto airport is the Puzzles Canada store. It's Canada's largest puzzle store, puzzle warehouse, and they're located in Georgetown. They're a main sponsor of the event, so yeah, that makes sense. While I do feel for the people that are traveling from British Columbia way out west every year, or even the people coming in from the East Coast, I'm going to hold on to that 30-minute drive it takes me to get to Georgetown as long as I can. So there's no complaints for me. Do I think in the future they will change the city or town that it's held in? It's possible. There would need to be a really good reason as to why. If it's due to the size of the venue, I guess that makes sense, but there's going to be a limit on how many people will attend the Canadian Nationals. That could be a reason to leave Georgetown, but I still don't see it leaving central Canada in terms close to Toronto. It makes the most sense geographically. To move out of Ontario altogether, I see that as unlikely, maybe to Montreal, but even then, probably not. Moving to either coast would require a more number of people to be traveling across the country and buying airfare. Trains aren't really an option reasonably. The bulk of the Canadian population lives within Ontario and Quebec and near to the south parts of those. Over 60% of Canada lives within those two provinces, and the percentages is probably similar when it comes to speed puzzling. So having a disproportionate amount of people having to travel to British Columbia or Alberta or Halifax or to either of the coasts wouldn't make any sense. Definitely not Saskatchewan or Manitoba. The event is also the same number of rounds as last year, with 9 total rounds, 2 qualifying rounds for the individuals, pairs, and teams, and 1 final round for each of those as well. For the individual rounds, it's 500-piece puzzles in every round. For the teams, it's a single 1,000-piece puzzle for each of the qualifiers and the finals. And Canada's sticking with being a little bit unique when they do their nationals. We have, for the pairs competitions, a 500-piece puzzle for the pairs qualifiers, but similar to the World Championships, a 1,000-piece puzzle in the finals. Again, one of the only countries in the world that does that, which I really like. I think it adds some extra pressure and extra skill needed for the pairs final. I do like it. The 500-piece puzzles go so quick when it comes to pairs, especially when you have the top people competing. It makes things a little bit more interesting when you throw in a 1,000-piece puzzle. Day 1 of the competition, this takes place over technically 3 days. The first day on the Friday is a social event. No official events take place for that, but on the official day 1, I guess, which is the Saturday, all the individual rounds are held, including the final, which I am against, and we'll get into that in a second, as well as both of the pairs qualifiers. On day 2, the Sunday, we have the pairs finals, as well as the teams qualifiers and teams final. So there are 2 reasons why I do not like the setup of where they place the individual finals. This is a hill I will die on when it comes to speed puzzle national competitions, major competitions that take place over the course of a weekend. The first reason, which is very specific to this particular event, is the scheduling. I'm going to read some stuff on here so I get the numbers right. The individual finals takes place between the pairs qualifiers. So there's one pairs qualifier, then the individual final, and then the other pairs qualifier. It was the same last year, and it makes absolutely no sense to me. 0 sense. But the entire day schedule is important for context. So I'm going to make sure I get this right. Registration on day 1 starts at 7:45 in the morning, with round 1 taking place at 8:30 a.m., except it's not really 8:30 a.m. That's when you can go and find your table. The actual first round doesn't start until 9 a.m. A fairly reasonable start, I guess. There's not a huge difference between 8:30 and 9, but fine. 2 hours for that round. Yep, that's all good. Everyone is kicked out of the room at 11 a.m., except for some piece counting. Okay, great. 15 minutes to reset the room, plus another 15 minutes for people to find their seats and get ready. So a half-hour changeover between them. You know what? That's all good for now. That being said, they do tend to run behind every single year. It's like when you're watching sports in North America specifically, and you're watching hockey, and the start time for a hockey game is 7 p.m. That's the time listed. But they don't actually start the national anthems until like 7:05, which anthem shouldn't be there anyways. But 7:05, then they do some other stuff. The real game doesn't start till 7:15, 7:20 sometimes. Football is the same. Basketball, similar. Baseball to some degree. They're a bit better with it, but not always. Watch a soccer game. Watch the World Cup this year. Well, maybe it's in North America, so never mind. When you watch a soccer game, football game in any other country, the start time is 7 p.m. You know when they kick the ball? 7 p.m. it starts. Because they do all that nonsense lead-up stuff to it. These are the rules. These are that. Beforehand. Do the same thing. Every sport in the world. You want to do the national anthems? Great. Start them at 6:30. Who cares? Yes. For nationals, people are nervous. People want to get this started. Honestly, we don't want to sit and listen to the rules once the time has started on that. People are watching the live streams. They don't want to be watching. Just If it starts at 11, starts at 11. Starts at 12, starts at 12. Stick with the times. Rant one of many done for that. But let's get back to the schedule on here. Then after the next so after the second individual qualifiers, there's an hour break for lunch and to set up the pairs tables. Now, the tables will all stay the same. It's really the pairs chairs. You need to bring out extra chairs, which, yes, that does take time. I get that. However, on the schedule, it implies that participants in that first pairs qualifier are to go and get their own chair, I'm guessing from a stockpile of chairs, and bring that to the table. So really that full hour isn't needed because the participants are doing that. That's what the schedule implies. Then we have the first pairs qualifier, which goes from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. It's a 90-minute round. Sure. 15 minutes. Okay, so this is where things go. 2:30 to 4 o'clock. 90-minute round for the pairs qualifier, the first one. 15 minutes later, the individual final starts. 15 minutes later. Sorry, that's an insane scheduling aspect to put in. And honestly, it's not fair. And I said the same thing last year, and I'm not being biased on either side of this because I will have been in both situations. Here we go. The mentality you need for a pairs round is different than an individual round. You are also using up mental stamina and physical stamina by being in multiple events. Yeah, we understand that. That's fine. Now, full disclosure, I am in the first pairs qualifier this year. So you might be thinking, well, of course you think it's not fair because you're in the first one. Yeah, I'm not happy about it, but I was in the second qualifier last year and I thought it was equally as unfair. So for this one, I need to make a decision on how I approach the pairs qualifier so I'm minimally impacted for the individual final, which happens 15 minutes later. Now, I will hopefully not take the full 90 minutes to finish that puzzle. I'd be surprised if me and my partner took that long to do it, but you never know what happens. Either way, 15 minutes in between. And as we saw last year, the individual puzzle can be a nightmare. Walk in the rain, this absolute nonsense up here, individual final, that it takes a lot of mental capacity to get through that. I spoke to a number of people, including faster individuals, specifically mentioned that after the individual final, going into the pairs qualifier after, they were in the first qualifier. They felt tired going into the individual final immediately after. And that takes a lot out of you. On the other side, yes, people did this puzzle, which was mentally draining, and then had to go into a qualifier for the pairs right after. I was in that second qualifier last year. I don't remember the vast majority of that round. The only goal my partner and I had was, you know what? Let's just qualify for the finals. That shouldn't be the mentality you have going into that round. Whatever. Once the individual final is done, there's then a 45-minute break and 15 minutes to get seated. It's like an hour in between that. Why not have the second pairs qualifier immediately after the first pairs qualifier, because there's no crossover in participants, and then have your nice hour bit break and finish the day with the individual qualifier? That seems logical to me. No one has ever explained why they've put that individual final in between two qualifiers with such a little So yes, I'm not thrilled with that once I saw the schedule was released ages ago, that they were just doing the same thing over again. There was a lot of people that were not happy about it last year. Nothing changed. And no explanation why. That's all we need. Why? Why is it scheduled in that way? I've thought about it last year. I've thought about it again this year, and I can't think of a single good reason why you would split the pairs qualifiers up and put the individual final in the middle. Not a single reason. If you have one, leave a comment below. But if you are focused on the individual final as your priority as a competitor, there's a huge advantage to those who are not in the first pairs qualifier. There just is. A lot of the top people will not need to put 100% of effort into their pairs qualifying because they're going to get through. A lot of pairs get through. But if you're trying to make predictions, it is interesting to look to see who this applies to. Who is in that first qualifier, who is in that second qualifier, and honestly, that kind of impacted my decisions a little bit in the prediction video. It's also interesting to see who has an advantage here of the people who are not in contention for the top spots, but still want to do well. There's going to be some pairs that are going to be on the border on if they qualify or not, and if they're in that individual final, then have to do the qualifiers, they might lose the spot because of it. The second reason, that was a long first reason. The second reason I don't think the individual final should be scheduled there is that I think the individual final should always be last. Always in a competition. Now I understand with limited time in the day, this can be tough. I don't care. The national champion, in my opinion, it matters a little bit more than the pairs and teams. You remember who that individual champion is for a lot longer than the pairs or the team's champions. And think about any sport. There's individuals that stand track and field. You're going to remember the 100-meter winner a lot longer than whoever won the relay race. It's important. Those rounds are important. People enjoy them. People care about them more when they're competing maybe than the individuals do, but it's about the national champion. Moving on to the venue, we are now in a new location after 3 years at the Georgetown Community Center. The event will now take place at the local arena, the Mold Masters Sportsplex Arena. Mold Masters. Not the best name, but okay. I'm very curious to see how this is going to work. There's 4 rinks in the building. One of them keeps their ice all summer. I'm really hoping we get that one. Unlikely, but that would be a twist. If we showed up and we're on the ice rink. It's a missed opportunity if they don't. It would be fun. And as I keep pushing for the World Series to be held in Canada, I think this is a good example of what it could look like. A new addition to the Canadian Nationals this year is the live stream, and honestly, I don't think they really had a choice. Every other notable nationals in 2026, and even some of the smaller ones, has had a live stream. You can't be the first not to have it, especially of one of the bigger puzzling countries. It's a must at this point to remain relevant in the global speed puzzling world. How the live stream will look and sound is still unknown. At this time, hopefully it turns out well. Of course I hope it turns out well. 2 of the 9 rounds will be in French, so I won't be giving much feedback on those rounds because I will not understand it. As for the English language rounds, the other 7, I recognize the majority of the names of people. So they've announced the list of commentators or co-hosts, whatever you want to call them. Sandra, also known as the Puzzling Canadian on YouTube, should be good. As for the rest, we'll have to see how they do on it, but I hope they enjoy it, I hope they have fun, and I hope they do amazing. Before the list was released, I was asked by a few people, once we knew that there's going to be live streams, I was asked by a few people if I would be commentating. No, absolutely not. I was not asked and wouldn't have anyways, not for the Canadian Nationals. My focus, once I'm there, is on the rounds. I care about how well I do in the individual pairs and teams rounds. But for other events, yes, sure, I would be happy to commentate. There are a few names I did expect to see on the co-host lists that aren't there. I'm not going to say anyone specifically, but I think there are a few omissions, for sure. Now, that being said, they could have been asked and they just said no, which, again, if I had been asked, I would have said no. So there's no way to absolutely know, but again, there's still a couple surprises that I would have thought would be on the co-host list. The live stream will be on the CJPA's, or Canadian Jigsaw Puzzle Association's, YouTube channel, there are no advanced links available to sign up for notifications at the time of this recording, so set a phone reminder, I guess. The first event starts at 9 a.m. on May 30th. Yeah, May 30th? May 30th. 9 a.m., May 30th, Eastern Standard Time. When it comes to the puzzles, just like 2025, every round will be an unreleased Ravensburger puzzle. Now, last year there was a couple errors with one of the images being seen by some people on the artist website in advance, and at least one of the stock images for the individual qualifier was already a puzzle for another brand that some people had done previously. It happens. I'm just hoping it doesn't happen this year. In 2025, every artist was Canadian. That is not the case this time. While that's disappointing, I understand it can be tough with timing, getting specific artists to agree, and also being able to get artists that can make appropriate speed puzzle designs. Not every piece of art is meant to be a speed puzzle. There's some examples that I might be able to think of. It's fine. It's not the end of the world that all the artists aren't Canadian. It is what it is. I do have guesses as to which artists will appear in which round, and that will actually be saved for my prediction video. Which is fine. I'm not going to say it here because I think I got every guess wrong last year. Good thing this channel didn't exist at this time last year. There's no videos on the channel yet, at least. So there's no video evidence of me getting it wrong. The headliner here is certainly Dean McAdam, a very well-known artist that has contributed many puzzles to the puzzle community as well as to speed puzzle competitions. He will be doing a couple signings during the event as well. There's no artist on this list that I put into an easy category. After going through their art styles, there's difficulty with each of them, but there's definitely some more challenging ones on this list. I'm looking at you, Ciro. But there are 6 artists and 9 rounds, which is exactly what happened in 2025. Does that mean there will be rounds with stock images in them, like there was last year? Absolutely fine. Will 2 rounds have the same artist in them? Or will multiple artists have multiple rounds? There's no way for us to know. Who decides on the art is always a bit of a question mark. It must go through some approval process. Having said that, let's look at some of the participants for this year, or the participants in general this year, no specifics. We have new participant eligibility this year for Canada. We are allowing international competitors, and they did it in a very fair way. Canadian residents and citizens had a lot longer, were able to sign up earlier for it, and once a good chunk of time had passed and there were still some spots available, it was open to international individuals. The internationals are not able to win any of the podium prizes, which again I think is fair and is similar to what most other countries do. I'm just hoping that please don't have an international competitor finish first overall. I know they can't win the first place prize, but I still want a Canadian to be number 1 in every aspect who's ever on that podium. Like I said, there's always an approval process when it goes through artist images and such, and people can stay away from information, but you can't stay away from all information. I still believe that anyone in an executive or top position within an organization, a puzzle association, specifically if you're organizing the event, should not be participating in the competition. Too much information is being shared, and if you're competing yet, maybe you don't know the images in your specific round, or maybe any of the rounds. Maybe. However, you'll know some stuff that's going on. You may know which artists are appearing in your specific round, or the other rounds, so you can narrow it down to what's your round. It's still an advantage. There's no way there's no advantage for it. And a lot of countries have realized this. The UK president did not participate this year. The Australian president does not participate in their national competitions. The US executives abstain from being into their national competitions. Neither of the German chair people appeared. Ireland, in their first nationals this year, will not have their president in it. And there's more countries as well. Canada? When looking at the seating assignments, there will be mixed feelings about which round people are placed in. I've gone through each event, and here are some of my thoughts. I'm going to have to read this as well. Starting with the individuals, at first glance, round B looks like the much tougher round. The 2025 and 2024 winner, Megan Sloka, is in it. Second place, Katie from 2025 is in there. Third place, Riley is also in that round. 1, 2, 3 from last year. That's a choice. But looking beyond that, 4th through 7th and 9th are all in round A, so then it tilts heavily to the other side. 19 of the top 20 from last year have returned. 12 of those people have been placed into the first qualifier, 7 into the other one. So a bit of an imbalance to start. There's some other big names making their appearances, first appearance at Nationals this year. Again, looking at the top 20, but this time from the Canadian rankings, 3 names on there to not compete in 2025. Emily Terrien from currently ranked number 2 is in round B, so we're 12 to 8 now. But however, Nicole Bertrand and Teresa Mezdeg, number 14 and 20, respectively on the rankings, are in round A. So we're back to a 14 to 8 imbalance. We also have some people who did not compete last year and are not currently ranked on the Canadian national rankings. Irina Shevchenko, a favorite to potentially win this whole thing. She placed 3rd at the U.S. Nationals this year, 19th at the World Series that took place earlier this month, in round A. As well as Caitlin McCluskey, who is also very fast, coming up from the States as well, Canadian coming up from the States, also in round A. 16 to 8 of essentially your top 24 competitors. It's an imbalance. I will say, like I said, round B is more top heavy with potential favorites to win the whole thing with Megan, Katie, Emily, Riley. But getting out of round A in the top 10 is going to be a battle. Top 10 matters because in each qualifier, the top 10, each qualifier gets a full table in the final. I don't agree with it. I think everyone should have a half table to make it easy for everybody. I even had a full table last year and it massively benefited me. I had a full table last year, yeah. Half tables for everybody. Very few people that were not in the top 16 last year, because it was only the top 8 from each qualifier. Very few people jumped into the top 16 if they didn't have that full table. But in my opinion, round A is much more competitive as a whole when it comes to the top 20, 25-ish in the competition as a whole. If this was based purely on the rankings, which I have different issues with, it's a bit more split evenly between the two. But so many other factors play into how the rankings work, and a lot of it's based on virtual results as well, which is not the same as in-person nationals results. Yeah, it is what it is. It's all set. Virtual success does not necessarily mean in-person success either. So we'll see. I've had a few top 5 finishes virtually. I'm not finishing in the top 5 at nationals. Not really going to talk about pairs and teams too much. Some of the top pairings from last year have returned. I'm going to save most of this for my prediction video, again with my 2 special guests on there as well. So make sure to watch the predictions. I do think we see some new pairs near the top, and same for teams. The 1st and 4th place team from last year, they have kept all 4 of their members. 2nd, 3rd, and 5th place teams have replaced at least one person on their team, so we may see some mix-ups in those, or change-ups in those top spots. Again, saving that for the prediction video. It will be an interesting race when it comes to teams this year, but I think there is one team that definitely stands out. So yes, the prediction video will be coming out in a few days. Definitely watch it. Let us know in that video, or in this video, what your predictions are for who wins in each of the different events. But that is it for this video. Click subscribe so you don't miss anything else that's coming out on this channel. There's a few more videos left for the Speed Puzzle World series with some guests coming up for that as well. And once the Canadian Nationals are over and I've wrapped up my World Series coverage, new episodes of Puzzled and Chatty, Champions Corner, Speed Puzzling 101 lessons. They will all return to enjoy over the next few months before the World Championships kick off, and the focus turns to that in September. So that is it for this video. Until next time, as always, happy puzzling. Bye. Oh, right, the winner. Who I think is going to win the 2026 Canadian Nationals. That's an awful way to end the video. Anyways, who I think is going to win the whole thing? Well, obviously, it's going to be